Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to New Horizons. If you do have a mobile phone, if you would like to put it on silent, please, thank you. Right, a massive welcome back to Tony Topping with the surveillance state beyond Snowden. The surveillance state, as highlighted by the alternative media for years, then distilled, spilled and splashed all over the papers via Snowden and others, is a splendid demonstration of maximum government. The Nazis had a human informer network, as did the Russians. Here, electronics and cameras of all descriptions do the same, but more efficiently. Tony tonight alleges far more than just movements, internet preferences, spending and emails are trawled and stored. His research uncovers sinister evidence of mind control on individuals and general public and psychological warfare using exotic technology and being used on innocent people. Please welcome Tony Topping.
Thanks very much, guys. I hope you can hear me loud and clear this evening. I hope it's going to be a good talk. I'm reading from notes because I'm suffering from mental exhaustion. I don't look as if I'm suffering from mental exhaustion. I may look okay to you, but I am suffering from it due to targeting with advanced technology and being a person who was of interest to corrupt elements in the state of national security who had me under surveillance by popular demand because I'm known as a UFO guy. I've put the UFO stuff to one side. It's linked to it, but we're going to leave it all on one side. For those of you who don't know me, that's what I'm about, UFOs. And my UFO situation is going to be placed on one side so we can talk about my life under high-tech surveillance as a UK citizen. And recently I was on a programme on Channel 4 that was broadcast a few weeks ago, and once again they turned up, and I love just getting involved and I suppose, you know, just getting involved with it all. But what was interesting about the broadcast was it said in the press release that I'm one of these guys who thought that he was targeted by the government and might still be. Well, this is my story of not being targeted by the government, but being targeted by elements of the state that are corrupt. And it's shocking. But I want you to know that it's an important stage in the spiritual development of all of us, and it's leading. This presentation will lead you to touch all the bases. I was involved in the business of surveillance for a number of years, for nearly 12 years in the industry. And mind control is often associated with conspiracy theories, and it has been, in fact, for 50 years. It's been an ongoing techno-political project. It was the development of the first supercomputers, systems that were developed for controlling the mind, brain and behaviour that was established. And it was part of the new science of cybernetics, according to the website ISA Act, which became public in 1948, when the American professor Norbert Wiener published his book with the same title. The researcher's project of mind control is most often classified as behaviour or cognitive manipulation, and the military took it over. And I was subjected to the most horrific neural monitoring and carry on. So I'm one of these guys who has had the government beam thoughts into his head. I'm one of these guys who's had that happen to him in real life, and it's very, very serious. By the time you go out the door at the end of this presentation, you will be under no doubt. Okay. Yeah, so we've covered that on the fact that I'm a victim of mind control, CCTV I was involved with, and state security surveillance, and that we're dealing with corrupt elements of the state who are involved in national security in targeting individuals like myself. Where this leads to is very worrying indeed. And you know, it has been an ongoing project for nearly 50 years to take over the human brain, monitor it and research it. But one of the most interesting things about mind control is this little thing here, which is a parasite. And this parasite is, considering that the advertising industry spend millions of pounds on advertising to try and control you, as we'll cover this later, and convince you and control your mind to buy more things. This little beauty is a parasite which is called Toxoplasma gondii. It is the finest example in nature of a mind control, because what is fascinating about it is it's the most widespread of all parasitic protozoas. Some researchers indicated that there is a possibility that this parasite may actually alter human personalities as well. It's fascinating how it manages to control the behaviour of animals and other species to cause them to die, especially rats. It controls the brain so that rats do not have any fear of cats, and it more or less navigates itself so that the rat is eaten by the cat, so it takes residence in the cat. There you go. And it's one of the finest, I think, one of the finest mind control examples in nature. And I am known as a targeted individual. I'm a TI. That's somebody who is targeted, who is under surveillance, who is watched to all intents and purposes. The mainstream media think that you're completely paranoid and they joke about it, but nothing could be further from the truth. And I was brutally tortured by an unelected security unit within the framework of government. And it's very controversial. And we take tremendous risks in in delivering this information to you. I'm actually at some level of risk in delivering this information to you. You wouldn't think so, but I am. I'm overtly and was covertly watched, and I was gang stalked. Gang stalked is a popular term used in mind control because it means that you have organised people gang stalking you, literally stalking you. For example, I'll come to an example, a fine example of gang stalking soon. But I was overtly and covertly watched. Now, this is interesting because a lot of people say, well, if you're under surveillance, you're covertly watched. But there's a technique called overt surveillance as well. And one of the techniques they would do with me back in 1999 when I was being monitored by them was that they would leave an answering machine message telling me where I'd just been, which was a popular thing they would do. And so what would happen is I'd walk outside my local Tesco's with shopping, and they would go, oh, he's just left Tesco's now, oh, look at the shopping he's got, look at the bread he's got, oh, or they'd leave answering machine messages with music, or the phone would ring and somebody would be screaming down the phone telling me to shut up. And that in a democratic society, ladies and gentlemen, is very worrying. I suspected the source, and I suspected that this gentleman here is one of the people who were involved in my harassment. And that's actually a lookalike of him. And it took a lot of working out, about 14 years or so, to understand how he was involved in neuro-targeting and neuro-monitoring of me. Because he's responsible, is this man, for what's known as a control effects unit. Some people who are subversives in the UK, who are classed as subversives, are targeted by control effects. So when you think that the government is beaming thoughts into your head, this is the true story of what actually goes on. Despite the ridicule, despite the taking of the piss out of it, despite the fact that people think you're insane, this is what really goes on in your country, ladies and gentlemen, and you should be very worried indeed. And so this man, he's a mock-up of an actor called, forgotten his name, but it's from the film Smoking Aces. And he looks like a character in that film called Gerald Digo, and somebody's just adjusted it, made it up, and it looks the spitting image of him. And this was because he was causing, this man was throwing technology when I slept. I was asleep, and what would happen is during the night we would end up with a situation where I was deprived of sleep, and we'd have situations going on where the technology was such that you would have drilling and head stabbing going on. So what would happen, there was one situation that occurred where I was asleep, and next minute I know this high technology comes into my awareness. That's all I can describe it as in simple terms. And it starts to do its thing on me. And that thing was very sinister, because what the technology is capable of doing is altering you neurologically, and the signalling system is capable of vibrating in cohesion with bodily frequencies to cause a load of problems for you. And so drilling in the head and stabbing was the most sensations, were absolutely horrendous, while the body was relaxed in sleep. If you've seen the movie Psycho, where there's the shower scene, that's exactly what they did. And it was an artificial simulation. It was very advanced military technology that they were testing on me. And also what is most hideous as well is involuntary muscle movement. So suddenly that can happen, even with mind control if you're targeted. Suddenly you have no effect on your muscle movement, and that can cause a lot of problems, and that has caused problems for me. And in fact, only last night I was targeted, and I was trying to fall asleep at 2 in the morning, hand to the head like that. Now, some people would say, oh, that's a medical problem, but no, it's reported across the world by thousands of targeted individuals that this is actually going on. So, and we also have the sound effects of gunfire, telephones ringing, all that kind of thing, 3 and 4 in the morning. And what is interesting as well is it was on the hour, every hour as well. So there's a precise coordination to it, and the voices are coherent. Another popular thing the media will tell you is that there is people like me are obviously schizophrenic. What they don't realise is that it was coherent, full speech, and they were testing weapons technology of some description on me. And so it's known as control effects, and it's very sinister. In fact, it's more classified than the atomic bomb, and its problems, the problems of trying to get this into the public domain, or of the victims involved, it's similar to the atomic bomb. When the victims of mind control challenge governments and organisations, they're more or less similar to the atomic bomb survivors say, or atomic bomb people who've been tested by atomic weapons. They more or less say, oh, there's nothing to worry about, we're not guilty, we're not responsible. And control of your mind is a classified military capability, which can also be defined as psychological warfare also. You'll be surprised as we go on into the presentation, I'm going to show you some things about that as well. And research on mind control is played down. It's played down a lot in the media. The various media articles in the public domain indicate that the research is far too complex. We've only gone this far with it. We can't really map the brain. The mind is too complicated to understand. Look very closely on the internet and you will discover there are various patents out there, as we'll see later, where this technology has existed and is going absent without leave upon you, the public. And it's a very dangerous and sinister matter. It really is. And its origins and techniques. I think, you know, the mystery religions of ancient Egypt, Greece, India, Babylon, helped lay the foundation for occultism. It certainly did. And it means hidden knowledge. And one of the earliest writings given in reference to occultism and mind control is the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It's a compilation of rituals, explicitly describing methods of torture and intimidation to create trauma, because that's what it's all about. It's about trauma-based mind control. And I'm a survivor of trauma-based mind control. It takes balls of steel to confront such individuals, find out where they are, what they're doing. It takes a lot of doing to do that. I think you'll find the Jason Bourne films in the Bourne Identity with the third trilogy gives a very fine example of the scene on Waterloo Station where the CIA are after the Guardian journalist and they're after Jason Bourne. And there's a very good example of a psychotic mindset of the people that are going after him, because that's what it is. It's completely, the individuals behind this are psychotic, then they should not be doing what they're doing, and it's a crime. But we'll come to that later. And it's interesting that during the 13th century, the Roman Catholic Church increased and solidified its dominion throughout Europe with the Spanish Inquisition. And Satanism survived this period of persecution, deeply entrenching itself under the various veils of various esoteric groups, because mind control, ladies and gentlemen, is satanically driven. There is a satanic element, a very dark and sinister element to the mind control situation. A cursory glance on the internet will show you this. If that wasn't enough, you probably don't know, and you wouldn't know, that the very first mind control machine was something developed in 1801 by somebody called the Heirloom Gang. And what it is, that's an example, ladies and gents, of an early mind control machine. It's a mind control machine that is called an heirloom, and it targeted, even in the 1800s, a political activist called James Matthews. This poor man suffered horrendously. Just to give you some quotes here of what was going on from the research I've looked at, just to share with you. Mr. Matthews, are you acquainted with the art of talking with your brains? It is affected by the means of a magnet. This is in 1801. This is a documented thing. And the machine they had developed for this purpose, the heirloom, it would combine recent developments in gas chemistry with the strange force of animal magnetism or mesmerism, and it incorporated keys, levers, barrels, batteries, sails, gas retorts and magnetic fluid. And it ran on a mixture of foul substances, including the discharges of fluid excreted from substances that were not very pleasant, say no more, and it was designed to deliver thoughts, feelings and sensations directly into Mr. Matthews' brain. And there were many modulation techniques, even in 1801, many modulation techniques, many ways of transmitting the signal to him. And these were described as event workings, one of them. Another one was called fluid looking. Another one was called stone making. And another one was called phi talking. They sent him completely barking mad. And you can see that the terminology I used previously was something called control effects. So even back in 1801, we can clearly see that this technology was available. What is fascinating is that he believed, just go back again to that, this man, Mr. Matthews, actually believed that there was a global conspiracy, even back then, by the Jacobean. That's what he believed, and that's why he went into the lunatic asylum called Bedlam. There you go. Very interesting. So, really, the origins of mind control began, probably, I would say, in the UK in about 1882. And it formed into something called the Tavistock Institute in 1921. That's commonly known as the shock troops, how they psychologically spin the media, manipulate the media, how they psychologically manipulate you to make decisions, how they use this mind control technology to alter you, to make you go against your own will. And there were some very deep, sinister people involved in it as well. And by the 19th century, Great Britain and Germany was recognised as the primary geographic areas of Illuminati control. It then should be little surprise to know the first work in behavioural science research was established in England in 1882. A machine was established in 1801, as we saw then. And while much of the early medical and psychiatric techniques involved in mind control were pioneered at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in Germany. So the Tavistock Institute set up in 1921 to study the breaking point of human beings. Kurt Llewellyn, a German psychologist, became the director of the Tavistock Institute in 1932. And that was about the same time that Nazi Germany was increasing its research into neuropsychology, parapsychology, and multi-generational occultism, which is a very interesting thing indeed. And it progressed to an exchange of scientific ideas which was taking place between England and Germany. In fact, Russia and Germany worked very closely indeed in a place called Volsk. And what they did, they were doing joint operations between 1920 to 1927 in the development of psychotechnology weapons, known as psychotronic weapons. I know, ladies and gentlemen, I've been the victim of one for 5 years. I'm still getting hit now. We don't know, people like me actually don't know how long we've got on this mortal coil. But we're hit, and it's very unpleasant, and you will know about it if you get hit. And it's very, very nasty. So even back then, in 1920 to 1927, Russia and Germany were working closely with it. In fact, Russia has developed an array, a whole arsenal of neuro-invasive, mind-invasive weapons technology that is very frightening. The other basic thing that we should cover during the course of this presentation is, of course, Operation Paperclip. Operation Paperclip was very interesting because it delivered the German scientists to the Department of Defence, who were responsible for the mind control technology that we see today. My targeting would have had its origins, and the technology they used on me would have had its origins within Operation Paperclip. This form of Nazism descended into our intelligence services, into NASA, into the military. What you've got is this very sinister, therefore corrupt operation that is currently going on. And after World War II, the US Department of Defence secretly imported many of the top German Nazi and Italian fascist scientists and spies into the United States via South America and the Vatican. The code name for this operation was Project Paperclip. One of the more prominent finds for the US was a German general called Richard Gehlen, Hitler's chief of intelligence against Russia. And this is also interesting as well because the Nuremberg Code has 10 principles that are listed in the final judgment of the doctor's trial. In most US doctors and researchers who are involved with research involving human subjects should know of the Nuremberg Code and its first rule. The voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. I did not consent to what happened to me, and they've broken various protocols, and just recently there was a lady from Finland who had recently had her life taken because she was trying to get the European Parliament to consider banning these neural mind invasive weapons.